I don't date older men. Marisol Ortega smirked, her chin tilting upward in an audacious display of defiance. She stood amidst the glittering ruins of the ballroom, her gaze locked on the towering figure blocking her only exit. Stellan Viremont, the Alpha King, stepped closer. The shadows seemed to cling to his broad shoulders, his silver-flecked eyes narrowing with a predatory, ancient heat that made the breath catch in her throat. He leaned down, his voice a dark, vibrating rumble that shook her very bones. You've never met one like me. The crystal chandeliers of the Viremont estate cast a fractured, icy glow over the elite of the werewolf world. Beneath the sweeping arches of the grand ballroom, predators disguised in silk and velvet danced to the mournful notes of a string quartet. Marisol Ortega did not belong here. At 22, she was an unregistered rogue, a ghost in a society governed by bloodlines and brutal hierarchies. Yet, here she stood, draped in a borrowed gown of midnight blue that clung to her curves like a second skin, her dark curls pinned back with deceptive elegance. She wasn't here for the champagne or the political maneuvering. She was here for the Moonstone cipher, a relic currently resting in the private study of the Alpha King. Marisol moved through the crowd with the fluid grace of a shadow, her senses dialed to maximum. The scent of expensive perfumes and heavy alpha pheromones threatened to overwhelm her, but she kept her breathing steady. She needed to reach the East Wing. Slipping past a group of gossiping emissaries, she found the velvet-draped corridor that led away from the festivities. The music faded into a dull, rhythmic thumping, mirroring the frantic beating of her own heart. The security was predictably tight, but Marisol was unpredictable. She bypassed the guards by scaling the exterior stone wall, her bare feet finding purchase on the ancient ivy, until she slipped through a cracked window into the Alpha King's sanctuary. The study was a testament to centuries of rule. Dark mahogany shelves groaned under the weight of ancient tomes. A fire crackled in the massive hearth, casting dancing shadows across the room. And there, resting on a velvet pedestal, was the cipher. She reached for it, her fingertips brushing the cool, pulsing surface of the stone. I wouldn't touch that if I were you. The voice was not a shout, but a low, resonant drawl that seemed to emanate from the very walls. Marisol froze, every instinct screaming at her to run, to fight, to shift. She turned slowly. Emerging from the darkness of a high-backed leather chair was Stellan Viremont, the Alpha King. He was a terrifying vision of masculine power. Though rumors said he had ruled for over a century, he looked to be in his late 30s, an age that, to Marisol, felt entirely out of her league. Silver dusted the temples of his raven-black hair, and a faded scar cut a jagged path across his strong jaw. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that did nothing to hide the lethal, coiled energy of his broad frame. His eyes, the color of a stormy sea, locked onto hers with a devastating intensity. You're out of bounds, little wolf, Stellan murmured, taking a slow, deliberate step forward. The sheer weight of his aura hit Marisol like a physical blow, demanding submission. She fought the urge to bare her neck. Instead, a defiant, reckless smirk painted her lips. I was just admiring the decor, Your Majesty. Stellan's gaze dragged down her body, slow and calculating, before rising to meet her eyes. He didn't look angry. He looked fascinated. Admiring? Or stealing? You are Marisol Ortega, daughter of the exiled, a thief with a reputation for recklessness. Marisol's heart skipped a beat. He knew her. The king of all wolves knew exactly who she was. She masked her panic with bravado, tilting her chin up. This was the moment she delivered her infamous line, the desperate, audacious deflection to mask her sudden, terrifying vulnerability. I don't date older men, she smirked, feigning a casual arrogance she didn't feel. Stellan stopped inches from her. The scent of him pine needles, petrichor, and dark, intoxicating power enveloped her completely. He leaned down, his breath warm against the shell of her ear. You've never met one like me. Before she could process the dark promise in his words, the study doors burst open. Paxton Storm, a younger, fiercely ambitious alpha of the Northern Pack, strode in, flanked by guards. My king, Paxton sneered, his eyes darting to Marisol. I see you've caught a rat in your sanctum. Stellan didn't look away from Marisol. The air between them crackled with an unseen electricity. She is no rat, Paxton, Stellan said, his voice turning to ice as he addressed the younger alpha. She is my guest. And you are interrupting. The sheer unpredictability of Stellan's claim left both Marisol and Paxton staring in stunned silence. The Alpha King had just claimed a rogue thief as his own, and as Stellan's hand wrapped securely, possessively, around Marisol's waist, pulling her flush against his hard chest, she realized her simple heist had just become a deadly game of royal politics. Marisol awoke not in a dungeon, but in a bed softer than a cloud, draped in silk sheets that smelled faintly of Stellan's intoxicating cedar and storm scent. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, revealing a sprawling view of the Viremont territory, endless emerald forests beneath a jagged mountain range. She sat up, her mind racing. Last night was a blur of political theater. Stellan had paraded her past Paxton Storm in a ballroom full of whispering nobles, claiming she was a person of interest under his direct protection. Then, he had locked her in this gilded cage. The heavy oak door clicked open. Francesca Bellari stepped into the room. Francesca was the king's fiercely elegant head of security, a woman whose beauty was as sharp as a finely honed stiletto. Her platinum hair was pulled into a severe knot, and her dark eyes appraised Marisol with a mixture of disdain and intense curiosity. "The king requests your presence in the solarium," Francesca stated, her tone clipping the air. "Tell the king I'm not his pet," Marisol shot back, throwing the silk sheets aside. She was still wearing the midnight blue dress from the night before, though it was now wrinkled and slightly torn at the hem. Francesca let out a short, humorless laugh. "You have no idea what you are, do you, little rogue? You think Stellan spared you because you're pretty? He spared you because you are a liability. Now, walk, or I will drag you." Marisol weighed her options. Fighting Francesca would be suicide. The woman was an elite warrior. Reluctantly, Marisol followed her through the labyrinthine corridors of the estate. The walls were lined with portraits of past kings, their eyes seemingly tracking her every move. The solarium was a breathtaking glass structure filled with exotic flora. Stellan stood at the center, his broad back to her, pruning a rare, silver-leafed nightshade. He wore a simple black button-down, the sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and laced with faded, brutal scars. "Leave us, Francesca," Stellan commanded without turning around. Francesca hesitated, casting a warning glare at Marisol before slipping out the door. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with unspoken questions. "Why am I here?" Marisol demanded, refusing to let him set the pace. "If you're going to execute me for attempted theft, get on with it. If you're using me to piss off Paxton Storm, you're wasting your time. I have no political value." Stellan finally turned. The morning light caught the silver in his hair, making him look at once incredibly ancient and breathtakingly vital. The age gap between them, the sheer wealth of experience and power he possessed, was a physical presence in the room. Young alphas like Paxton were hot-headed, eager to prove their dominance with loud roars and violence. Stellan didn't need to roar. His power was a quiet, suffocating blanket. "You have more value than you know, Marisol," he said softly, walking toward a small iron table set with tea. He poured a cup and pushed it toward her. "Drink. I don't take orders from you. It's chamomile." "You're shaking," he pointed out, his voice infuriatingly calm. Marisol looked down at her hands. They were, indeed, trembling slightly. Frustrated by her own biological betrayal, she snatched the cup. "You didn't answer my question. You were trying to steal the Moonstone cipher," Stellan said, his eyes locking onto hers. "Tell me who hired you." "No one hired me. I work alone." Stellan sighed, a deep, weary sound that hinted at decades of dealing with liars. "You are 22 years old, an unregistered rogue. The cipher is a heavily warded artifact that suppresses the dark magic of the old bloodlines. A girl like you wouldn't know what it is, let alone how to bypass the first layer of my wards." He leaned across the table, his physical proximity making her breath hitch. "Who told you how to break the wards, Marisol?" She couldn't tell him. If she mentioned Rhett Calderstone, her mentor, the only family she had left in the rogue camps, Rhett would be dead by nightfall. "I'm just a very good thief," she lied, holding his gaze. Stellan's lips twitched into a microscopic, dangerous smile. "You are stubborn and unpredictable. That makes you dangerous." He reached out, his large, rough fingers gently brushing a stray curl from her cheek. The touch sent a jolt of pure electricity straight to her core. She gasped, leaning back, furious at her own body's reaction to him. "Don't touch me," she snapped. "Your body betrays your words, little wolf," Stellan murmured. "You say you don't like older men, But you respond to me. You recognize my authority, even if your mind refuses to accept it. You're an arrogant dictator, she spat. And you are a pawn in a game you don't understand. Stellan countered, his tone hardening. Paxton Storm is rallying the northern packs. He believes my reign has made the wolves weak. He wants the cipher to unleash the old, feral blood magic. If he gets it, thousands will die. You were sent here to hand him the key to a slaughter. Marisol stared at him, the bottom dropping out of her stomach. Rhett had told her the cipher was a healing stone, something to cure the sickness spreading through the rogue camps. Had Rhett lied to her? Was he working with Paxton? Before she could process the betrayal, the glass of the solarium shattered inward. A deafening roar ripped through the tranquil morning air. 3 massive wolves, their fur matted with dark, unnatural magic, crashed through the wreckage, their red eyes fixed entirely on Stellan. The velvet cage had just been broken. Glass rained down like deadly diamonds. Marisol threw her arms over her head, diving behind the wrought iron table. The terrifying snarls of the magically enhanced assassins reverberated through her chest. When she dared to peek out, she witnessed a display of violence so raw and magnificent it stole the breath from her lungs. Stellan hadn't fully shifted. He didn't need to. He stood amid the ruined flora, his claws elongated, his eyes glowing a blinding ethereal silver. He moved with a speed that defied his massive size. The first assassin lunged. Stellan sidestepped, catching the beast by the throat and slamming it into the stone floor with a force that cracked the foundation. The second and third attacked in unison. Marisol, run! Stellan bellowed, his voice laced with the compelling power of the Alpha command. Her inner wolf whined, instinctively wanting to obey the Alpha King. But Marisol was a rogue. Rebellion was in her blood. She scrambled backward, her eyes darting around the room. She couldn't fight these monsters, but she couldn't leave him either. Why? Why did she care if the Tyrant King fell? Because he hadn't killed her. Because his touch had felt like a brand of fire she wasn't ready to extinguish. As Stellan grappled with the 2 remaining wolves, one of them managed to sink its teeth deeply into his shoulder. A dark, sickly black venom immediately began to spread from the wound. Stellan roared in pain, a sound that shattered the remaining panes of glass in the room. Marisol saw a jagged shard of glass the size of a sword lying near her boots. Without thinking, she grabbed it. She didn't possess the brute strength of an alpha, but she had agility. She vaulted over the overturned table. Using the element of surprise, she drove the glass shard deep into the eye of the wolf biting Stellan. The beast released a horrific shriek, thrashing backward and releasing the king. Stellan didn't waste the opening. With a brutal twisting motion, he snapped the neck of the final assassin. Silence descended on the solarium, broken only by the ragged breathing of the 2 survivors. Stellan collapsed to his knees, clutching his shoulder. The black veins were spreading rapidly up his neck. Marisol dropped the bloody glass and rushed to his side. Up close, the age gap vanished. He was no longer an ancient king, just a wounded, vulnerable man. Stellan, she gasped, using his first name without thinking. His silver eyes flickered to her, hazy with pain. I told you to run, you foolish girl. I told you I don't take orders. She shot back, tearing a strip of fabric from her ruined silk dress and pressing it hard against his wound. The blood soaked through instantly. What is this? This isn't normal wolf venom. Shadowbane. Stellan ground out, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked like it might shatter. Paxton's warlocks. They've weaponized it. It stops the healing factor. The solarium doors burst open again. And this time, Francesca stormed in, a pair of bloodied silver blades in her hands. She took in the scene: the dead assassins, the bleeding king, and the rogue girl desperately trying to stop the bleeding. For a fraction of a second, Marisol saw something unpredictable in Francesca's eyes. It wasn't relief. It was calculation. A cold, terrifying realization dawned on Marisol. The security breach. The delayed response. Francesca was working with Paxton. My king! Francesca cried out, rushing forward, her blades subtly shifting in her grip. Let me help. Stay back. Marisol barked, her own fangs elongating in a desperate show of defense. She positioned her body between Stellan and Francesca. Where were your guards, Bellari? How did 3 shadow wolves breach the estate in broad daylight? Francesca's face hardened into a mask of pure ice. Careful, rogue. You are speaking to your betters. Francesca, Stellan rumbled, his voice weak but still commanding. He struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on Marisol. The heat radiating from his body was feverish. "Stand down. He's poisoned, my king," Francesca said, taking a slow step closer. "He needs immediate medical attention. In the lower infirmary." "I will take him." "No," Marisol whispered fiercely to Stellan. She let them in. "I can smell the shadow magic on her boots." Stellan looked at Francesca, his eyes piercing through the haze of the poison. The betrayal struck him deeper than the venom. He had trusted this woman for a decade. But the Alpha King was nothing if not decisive. With a surge of final, desperate strength, Stellan grabbed Marisol's waist, pulled a silver pendant from his pocket, and crushed it. The world twisted violently. Space folded in on itself in a sickening rush of wind and blinding light, ripping them away from the estate, away from the traitor, and plunging them into the unknown. They crashed onto hard, unforgiving earth. Marisol gasped for air as the magical teleportation sickness rolled through her stomach. She scrambled up, coughing, and took in her surroundings. They were in a dense, ancient pine forest. The air was bitterly cold, carrying the scent of impending snow. Above them, the sky was bruised with the colors of twilight. Beside her, Stellan lay motionless in the dirt. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced her chest. "Stellan!" She crawled to him, rolling his massive frame onto his back. He was deathly pale, the black veins of the shadow bane now reaching his jawline. His breathing was shallow, a terrifying rattle in the quiet woods. Hey, old man, wake up," she said, slapping his cheek lightly. She tried to sound tough, but her voice cracked. His eyelids fluttered, revealing slivers of dull silver. "Old man?" he rasped, a ghost of a smirk touching his blue-tinged lips. "Careful. That's treason. I'll risk it." "Where are we?" "The Weeping Woods. At the edge of my territory." He swallowed hard, his eyes drifting shut. "Safe. For now." Marisol knew these woods. The Weeping Woods were infamous among rogues. They were wild, unpatrolled, and deadly. But they also contained old magic. "You're dying, Stellan," she said, her hands hovering helplessly over his blackened wound. "The poison is spreading to your heart. Then let it," he whispered, turning his head away. "The kingdom is rotting from the inside. Francesca, my own guard. Paxton has already won." "Stop it!" Marisol snapped, a sudden, fierce anger blazing to life within her. She grabbed his chin, forcing him to look at her. "You are the Alpha King. You don't get to quit just because it hurts. You dragged me into this mess, and you are not leaving me alone in these woods to get hunted down by your traitorous friends." Stellan looked at her, truly looked at her. Beneath the dirt, the torn dress, and the bravado, he saw a spirit burning brighter than any he had encountered in a century. She was unpredictable, unrefined, and utterly magnificent. The age and experience that separated them felt irrelevant in the face of her raw will to survive. "Why do you care?" he asked softly. "You came to rob me." Marisol hesitated. She didn't know why. She only knew that the thought of this powerful, infuriating man dying made her chest ache in a way she didn't understand. "Because Rhett lied to me," she confessed, the words tasting like ash. "The man who raised me. He sent me to get the cipher. If he's working with Paxton, then my whole life is a lie. I need to know the truth, and you're the only one who can give it to me. So you have to live." Stellan closed his eyes. "There is an old remedy for Shadowbane, but it requires magic, the kind that was wiped out centuries ago." Marisol's heart pounded against her ribs. She thought of the strange golden heat that sometimes flared in her veins when she was angry. A heat she had hidden her entire life because Rhett told her it was a curse that would get her killed. "What kind of magic?" she asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Sunfire," Stellan breathed. "The bloodline of the Solari. But they are extinct." Marisol looked at her hands. The twilight was deepening, shadows creeping across the forest floor. She took a deep breath, terrified of what she was about to do. She had never shown this to anyone, but Stellan's chest was barely rising. He had minutes left. "Stellan," she murmured, placing her bare hands flat against his bleeding poison chest. "You really have no idea who I am, do you?" She closed her eyes and let the walls down. She reached deep into the hidden, locked vault within her soul, calling upon the dormant lineage she had spent her life suppressing. A brilliant, blinding golden light erupted from her palms. Stellan gasped, his eyes flying open in shock as the agonizing, burning heat. The black veins of the Shadowbane hissed and began to retreat, burned away by the ancient, holy magic. When the light finally faded, Marisol collapsed forward, completely drained, her head resting on Stellan's broad, steady chest. Stellan lay frozen. The pain was gone. His healing factor was rapidly stitching his torn flesh together, but more importantly, the girl resting against him, the rogue thief who claimed to hate him, was the last living heir to the Solari. Slowly, reverently, he wrapped his arms around her exhausted body, pulling her tight against him. "You," he whispered into her dark curls, a profound shift occurring in his ancient soul, "are full of surprises." The dawn broke in a bruised palette of purple and gray. Marisol woke up wrapped in Stellan's heavy suit jacket, the lingering warmth of his body seeping into her chilled bones. She sat up, rubbing her eyes. The clearing was empty. Panic spiked for a moment before she caught his scent stronger now. Healthy. Dominant. She found him standing at the edge of a rushing river, his back to her. He was shirtless, washing the dried blood from his skin. The morning light caught the rippling muscles of his back and the intricate, sprawling tattoo of a wolf pack that covered his shoulder blades. Marisol swallowed hard, her mouth suddenly dry. He was magnificent, terrifying, powerful, and utterly captivating. "You're staring, little wolf," Stellan said, not turning around. Marisol flushed, thankful he couldn't see her face. "I'm making sure you're not going to drop dead. I spent a lot of energy saving your royal ass." Stellan turned, water dripping from his dark hair down his chest. His silver eyes were piercing, lacking the weary haze of the past 2 days. He walked toward her, each step deliberate, predatory. The space between them vanished as he stopped mere inches away. "You are Solari," he said, his voice a low rumble. "The Sun Witches. History says my ancestors slaughtered yours." "I know." Marisol lifted her chin, meeting his gaze unflinchingly. "Rhett told me to hide what I was. He said the Alpha King would execute me on sight if he knew. Yet here we are. I saved you. So, are you going to kill me?" Stellan's hand moved, moving so fast she couldn't track it, but the touch was astonishingly gentle as his knuckles brushed her cheek. "Kill you? Marisol, you hold the power to save our kind from the shadow magic Paxton is wielding. You are not my enemy. You are my salvation." His words hung heavily in the crisp air. For the first time, Marisol saw past the crown, past the centuries of age and command. She saw a man who had carried the weight of a rotting kingdom alone, a man desperate for a light in the dark. "Stellan," she breathed, the distance between their lips suddenly agonizingly small. Before the moment could crystallize, a high, mocking howl ripped through the forest canopy. The sound chilled Marisol to the bone. "We've been found," Stellan snarled, his romantic vulnerability instantly vanishing, replaced by the lethal king. They ran. But the Weeping Woods were no longer a sanctuary, they were a trap. As they burst into a wide, rocky clearing, they were surrounded. Over 50 wolves, their eyes gleaming with unnatural dark magic, blocked every exit. At the center of the clearing stood Paxton Storm. Beside him, in her human form, stood Francesca. And standing next to Francesca, looking down at the dirt, was Rhett Calderstone. Marisol stumbled to a halt, feeling as if the earth had dropped from beneath her feet. "Rhett?" she whispered, her voice shattering. The older rogue looked up, his face lined with guilt. "I'm sorry, Mari. Paxton promised us land. Freedom for the rogues. We just needed the cipher. You sold her to a traitor." Stellan's voice boomed, echoing off the rocks, dripping with pure alpha dominance. The sound forced several of Paxton's wolves to their knees. "You used her. The era of the old kings is over, Viremont," Paxton shouted, drawing a serrated blade glowing with Shadowbane. "The silver eclipse is tonight. My warlocks have tapped the ley lines. We don't need the cipher anymore. We just need you dead. You want my crown, boy?" Stellan stepped forward, his body shimmering as his bones began to crack and reform. He didn't just shift, he erupted. Before Marisol's eyes, Stellan transformed into a beast of nightmare and legend. He was twice the size of a normal wolf, his fur blacker than the void, his eyes burning with blinding silver fire. The sheer power rolling off him was a physical weight. This was the true Alpha King. The battle was chaotic, brutal, and deafening. Stellan tore through Paxton's ranks like a dark god of war. He was outnumbered 50-1, but his rage was apocalyptic. Yet, the shadow wolves kept coming, their pain receptors deadened by magic. Francesca zeroed in on Marisol. The traitorous guard drew her twin blades. Time to die, little anomaly. Marisol didn't run. The betrayal of her mentor, the danger to Stellan, it all crystallized into a white-hot fury. As Francesca lunged, Marisol didn't fight with claws or fangs. She thrust her hands forward, letting the furious sunfire explode from her palms. The golden blast hit Francesca squarely in the chest, throwing the elite guard 30 feet through the air, unconscious before she hit the ground. But the magic drew attention. Paxton saw the golden light. Realizing what she was, he abandoned the fight with Stellan and charged directly at Marisol. His Shadowbane blade raised to strike. Marisol turned, her hands raised. But the magic had drained her. She had nothing left. A massive black blur intercepted Paxton mid-air. Stellan's jaws clamped down on Paxton's weapon arm, shattering bone with a sickening crunch. Paxton screamed, dropping the blade. Stellan pinned the younger Alpha to the earth, his massive paws pressing into Paxton's chest, ready to deliver the killing bite. Suddenly, a strange, profound silence fell over the clearing. The remaining shadow wolves, seeing their leader broken and bleeding beneath the king, whimpered and pressed their bellies to the dirt in total submission. The rebellion was broken. The Viremont estate was quiet, the scars of the attack hidden beneath the meticulous work of the surviving staff. 2 weeks had passed since the battle in the Weeping Woods. Paxton Storm was rotting in the deepest cell of the dungeons, stripped of his alpha status. Francesca and Rhett awaited trial for treason. Marisol stood on the balcony of the king's chambers, watching the moonlight silver the forest canopy. She wore a simple, elegant gown of forest green, her wild curls finally tamed. She was no longer a prisoner, nor a rogue. She was the Solari. The heavy oak doors opened, and Stellan walked in. He looked tired, the political cleanup taking its toll, but his eyes softened the moment they landed on her. He walked up behind her, the heat of his large body a comforting presence against her back. "The northern packs have formally submitted," Stellan said quietly, his hands resting lightly on her waist. "The realm is secure." "And the rogues?" Marisol asked, leaning back into him just a fraction. "Amnesty," Stellan replied. "A new treaty is being drafted. They will be integrated, given land and rights. As you requested." Marisol turned to face him. The age gap between them, the centuries he had lived versus her 22 years, was undeniable. But they had faced death together. They had saved each other. The dynamic had shifted from dictator and captive to equals in power and spirit. "You're a good king, Stellan," she murmured, reaching up to trace the faded scar on his jaw. Stellan caught her hand, pressing his lips to her palm. The gesture was incredibly tender, a stark contrast to the beast she knew he housed within. "I was a tired king," he corrected, his silver eyes searching hers with a vulnerable intensity that stole her breath. "I was waiting for the end, until a reckless, impossible girl broke into my study and told me she didn't date older men." A soft, genuine laugh escaped Marisol's lips. "I meant it at the time. And now?" Stellan stepped closer, his arm wrapping around her waist, pulling her flush against him. The air grew thick, heavy with the undeniable mate pull that had been humming between them since the moment they met. "Now," Marisol whispered, tilting her face up to his, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "I think I might be willing to make an exception. Assuming, of course, the king can keep up with me." Stellan's eyes darkened with a possessive, consuming fire. A low growl vibrated in his chest. "I have lived for over a century, Marisol. I promise you. I have stamina you cannot begin to comprehend." He didn't wait for her witty retort. Stellan's mouth crashed down on hers. The kiss was a collision of fire and storm, a desperate claiming that ignited every nerve ending in her body. Marisol kissed him back with equal ferocity, her hands tangling in his raven hair. The age, the politics, the past, it all burned away in the golden heat of their shared bond. She was the sunfire that brought him back to life. He was the ancient shadow that offered her absolute protection. Together, they would forge a new era for the wolves. Unpredictable, defiant, and entirely unstoppable. Marisol and Stellan's journey proves that the most powerful bonds are born not from submission, but from the fiery collision of equals. Their love bridged centuries of secrets, healing a broken kingdom, and proving that sometimes the most unpredictable encounters lead to our greatest destinies. In the end, The rogue thief didn't just steal an artifact, she captured the untamed heart of the Alpha King. I hope you felt every ounce of the tension, betrayal, and romance woven into this cinematic tale. If this sweeping werewolf drama kept you on the edge of your seat, please like, share, and subscribe for more epic, emotionally charged stories. Let me know which character surprised you the most in the comments below.